She cheated and still could not be honest. Hello, this is my story. And I guess I'm putting it here to vent and also because I have yet to get over it. I, 23M, unfortunately met Jane, 20F, on a dating app. Personally, I think meeting people on dating apps to find a life partner is completely unrealistic, as I have friends who has had terrible experiences. So to my knowledge, dating apps are used more for hookups. The reason I was even on there was really because I wanted to see if I had game. Back to the story, we met on the app and got along right away. The 3-day rule was non-existent because we got along surprisingly well. After a few days of consistently texting each other, we decided to exchange numbers and chat on Telegram. At this point, I was telling myself not to have any expectations from a girl I met online, but was curious to see where it would lead to. Getting to know her was wonderful. We had a lot of similar interests, and it was exciting. After only 2 days of texting, she asked me out on a movie date as we were both movie geeks. I agreed to it and was really excited to watch The Flash with her, as it was also her favorite superhero. After an embarrassing first date, we went on multiple dates after that, and feelings were slowly getting involved. We were already doing what couples do after a few months in. We both knew that what we had was exclusive, but did not have a title. The reason for that is because none of us ever brought that topic up, as we were simply enjoying each other's company. But of course, inevitably there were some misunderstandings along the way, but we managed it. Sadly, after having a few misunderstandings with her, I saw her true character. Many people would call it red flags. For example, I was always the one planning the dates, and I always had to be the bigger person in every argument. She would say nasty things, but who doesn't? And I always thought that I had to be forgiving and mature in difficult times with her, basically be a gentleman even during hardship. But I guess I gave that energy to a person who did not deserve that. This is where it takes a turn. Jane had to go overseas for a school trip. It was only a 2-week trip. But my God, little did I know those 2 weeks would be terrible. For some odd reason, we found ourselves constantly arguing when she was overseas, mainly because she didn't pay any attention to what I had to say about my day. She only cared about me listening to her day, and I confronted her about it. No matter how many times I explained, she still couldn't see what was wrong, and it ended up being a heated argument. So I decided to let her know that the argument got a little overwhelming for me, and I needed space, and I would text her when I was feeling better. She said she respected that and told me to take care. After 2 days of calming myself down, I decided to text her. But she only replied hours later, which is very unlikely of her, as she always has her phone with her. The country she was in has the same time zone as mine too, but it's whatever, I just assumed she was busy. And after 8 hours, she finally replied. And it was such a cold response. I had this feeling in my stomach that something was wrong. My gut told me to re-download the dating app that we met on, and to my unfortunate surprise, she was online. I may have forgotten to mention this, but we decided to delete the dating app together when we both acknowledged how serious we were getting. So seeing her online was a tragedy. My heart sank and pounded violently at the same time. It became a little hard to breathe too. I think I was having a panic attack. I then tried to call her to ask what was going on, but she did not pick up. I called a few times as I desperately needed an answer, but she still did not pick up. So I waited until she came back from her trip so I can confront her in person. While waiting for her return, I was overthinking and spiraling at the same time. I had nasty images in my head as I started assuming what she has been up to overseas. After a few days of ignoring me, she decided to text me and agreed to talk in person. I already know what was going to happen, so I told myself to be as calm and respectful to her when I see her. And so she returned, and we met. She caught me up about the things I missed while we were not talking before I asked her what was wrong. And so she told me that she has detachment issues. She said she should have been affected by my absence, but she was not. And while I needed space, she took the time to reflect too, and realized that she was really heartless the way she treated me. I couldn't get upset as I felt she was being honest, and so I respected everything she said. And then I asked why she went back on the dating app, and she was stunned. She took a few seconds to process my question and proceeded to tell me that she was not. I said I saw her online because I downloaded it just to make sure she wasn't on there, but she was. Eventually, she admitted that she was on there, and the reason she gave really pissed me off. She said she downloaded it back, mainly because she was bored, and she was only swiping on guys, but never talking to them. Of course, in my head, I know it's bees, so I was still not pleased. I asked her if she was confident about what she said, and she said very. So I said, if you're that confident, then show me. And then she said she already deleted the app. I told her to download it back, and she did. What's interesting is when she did download it back, she couldn't log in somehow and was showing it to me on purpose. She tried a few times in front of me and it was not working. If you don't know, the reason she was unable to log in was because she turned off the data for that app. She thought I had no clue, but I knew. So I acted and said it's okay. In my mind, if she was willing to go to these lengths, she is hiding something. And I think it would be better not to know, because God knows what I would have done. And so I decided to stay calm, and I said it's okay. I just hope one day you will realize what I have done for you and be grateful for it. Today isn't that day. But when you do see everything, please do not come back and apologize because I have already forgiven you. And my intentions with you were always genuine. I hope you find what you are looking for, and please do not treat the next guy the way you treated me. Take care. It was painful to say this, knowing I got betrayed. And she teared up while I was telling her that speech for some reason. I don't know how I managed to still be nice and calm when all I wanted to do was cry. After seeing her fake tears, I gave her a hug and left, and we have never spoken since. It has been months, and I'm still wrecked over the betrayal. I would love to hear some advice from strangers here on how to properly get over this. All love. Redditor's comments. She was lying to you, mistreating you, and was also untrustworthy. You handled it like a pro. Time heals all wounds, my friend. Just don't ever consider taking her back. My response. Sometimes I regret the way I handled it. Thought that I shouldn't be so nice. But yes, I won't take her back. And thank you for the comments. All love, friend. Another Redditor comment. I'm sorry this happened to you, man. Thankfully, you found out who she was early and before marriage or kids. She was 100% lying to you. She was sleeping with other guys. Don't fall for her, I'm sorry, and I still love you. Text in a couple months. Be strong, bro. Story 2. My wife of 28 years had an affair with our therapist. My wife of 28 years had an affair with our therapist. My wife of 28 years had an affair with our shared, individual, not couples therapist. The therapist ended up losing his job, but moved out of state and is now practicing again. My wife, F48, and I, M51, have been married for 28 years. Our marriage had been relatively good for most of the time, at least I thought so. We have 5 kids, current ages 26 to 15. She was a stay-at-home mom for about 23 years, but the last 5 years she has gone back to work. About 8 years ago, my wife left our religion. I tried to support her the best I could while staying faithful myself, but she began to resent that I did not leave with her. She claimed I wouldn't listen to her arguments because she was a woman. That wasn't true, but I did and do feel strongly about staying in the faith. She also had complaints about me not helping enough with kids and chores, etc., which sadly I must agree with. I definitely could have done better there. I have depression and have been on medication for the past 15 years. Still, I had a lot low energy according to my wife, and she would complain it was bringing her down. Beyond those complaints, I felt we were much like a lot of other couples, with some minor problems, but still in a loving relationship. Apparently the minor problems were more of an issue for her. She began going to a therapist, M50, about 6 years ago, and a little later I began seeing him too individually. Several of our kids also saw him, and he was really good for them. I didn't go to see him very regularly, but I thought he was a nice guy, and he and a psychiatrist on staff would adjust my medications, and I felt I was doing better. Recently, my wife began acting oddly. It started with some late-night phone calls that she would take in her home office. I assumed she was talking with her sister or mother, as she often would, just not that late at night normally. One day, she sat me down and told me that she thought our marriage was in trouble, but didn't want to divorce. This shocked me, but I assured her I wanted her to be happy and that we could work on things and start some couples counseling. I thought I had some time to improve my own behavior and start the counseling. Then she started staying out late at night, telling me she was visiting a friend who was having problems. I wasn't worried about this at first, but it happened several nights in a row, and she wouldn't come home until midnight or later. This raised some flags because she worked early in the morning and she strongly guarded her sleep time, but she assured me she was just visiting her friend. We had a family tracking app on our phones that we mainly used to check on our children, but we could track each other too. One night, when she still wasn't home, I decided to see where she was. I didn't know where her friend lived, and the location that showed up was a residential area, so I assumed it was her friend's house, and my wife came home shortly after that. She pretended she had been at her friend's. She didn't go out for a few nights, but then did again and was still out around 2 a.m. I woke up and found she wasn't home, so curiously I checked the app and she was at the same location. Starting to have suspicions, I decided to Google the address. The first Google result was the professional website of therapist. He had a home office. I didn't want to believe it and wanted to find benign reasons she would be seeing therapists so late. But not being able to think of any, I saw that his phone number was listed on his website. I logged into our phone carrier's site and started looking at my wife's call and text logs. That same number was coming up hundreds of times. In fact, it was over 1,300 times in the past 6 weeks. I noted that the times of most of the calls and texts were late at night, but many were also during the day. I went back to bed and pretended I was asleep when she finally came home, just long enough to change into her work clothes and then leave for work. The next morning I woke up hoping that I had dreamt the investigating I did, but some Googling later confirmed what I had found. I started documenting everything. By this time, I hadn't seen therapist in over a year. A few days later, I asked her if she had seen therapist lately. She replied no, not in a couple months. I then asked if she was sure she hadn't seen him, and she huffily replied no. But I then told her I knew she was lying. I told her I had tracked her at his house. She tried to deny it still, and said that therapist had moved, and that wasn't his house anymore. This was partially true. He was in the process of moving out of state. I said that it was too much of a coincidence that she was visiting an address that just happened to be therapist's former house. I then presented all the evidence I had collected. She broke down and admitted to it. Her next reaction was to ask me not to get therapist in trouble. I replied I didn't want to get anyone in trouble, but I had to think about the situation since what therapist had done was wrong on so many levels. She also maintained that she didn't want to legally divorce because she didn't want to have to move, and our daughter was still in high school, etc. She did, however, say that she felt like our relationship was over and wanted to have an open marriage. I told her I needed time to think about things. She said her relationship with therapist was ending anyway, since he was moving. She did, however, continue to go see therapist and help him finish packing up. After he moved, They continued to phone and text all the time. I was still in shock and decided to go see another counselor at the same provider. Long story short, I ended up informing them about the affair. Therapist had still been working for the same employer after he moved, just doing counseling sessions remotely. But he was now fired. From what I have learned, he thought he wouldn't be able to work as a therapist anymore, but apparently after 6 months, he has found employment again with a counseling outfit in his new state. My wife and I decided to legally divorce. We are still sharing a house together until our youngest graduates high school in a couple years. We are friendly with each other. Redditor's comments. You need to file a professional complaint. He is a predator and there's no chance this is his first time doing this. Imagine how many marriages he destroyed because he wanted to get laid and could easily manipulate a fragile person to make that happen. Even if it only happened to one other couple, that's too many. He must have his license suspended. Absolutely. You need to go to the licensing board in the state he works in and report him there as well as his new employer. I can promise his employer will not want the fire that comes with keeping on staff. As for your wife, if you aren't divorced, get one and go no contact. You married a monster. And make sure you tell family and friends about what happened so your STB ex-wife can't spin everything against you. And the therapist, I mean, you go in being vulnerable and trying to fix your issues and find out they are manipulating the situation to their own benefits. Indeed. Like, subscribe and share? Thank you.